Lina Morrow had always known there was music in the world that no one else could hear. She felt it in the hum of power lines overhead, the rhythmic chirp of birds just before a storm, and the soft clicking of the old radiator in her room that somehow kept perfect three-quarter time. Even the rumble of subway cars beneath the ice-stabilized streets of New Oslo carried a resonance that made her spine tingle. Most people tuned it all out, but not Lina. She listened. She always listened. She was the kind of girl who drifted rather than walked, quiet, thin, and always scribbling in the margins of her notebooks. At New Oslo's secondary academy, she was more rumour than person. Teachers whispered about her behind closed doors, bright but strange, brilliant but unusual. Her classmates ignored her mostly until the test scores came out. Then came the wary stares and the murmurs. She aced everything: math, physics, linguistic logic trees, topics she'd never studied. No one knew how. When asked, she just shrugged. I don't know, it just feels right. She didn't mean to be difficult. It was just how her brain worked. The answers came in flashes, patterns of tone and rhythm. Equations weren't puzzles, they were melodies waiting to be played. The motion of planets echoed like pendulums. Even atomic structures had tempo. The world sang in subtle ways. Her grandfather had noticed it first. He'd been a sound engineer before the climate crashes, and he used to call her his little tuning fork. When she was 4, she'd told him his heart was skipping a note. A week later, a scan found the arrhythmia. Before he passed away, he gave her his harmonica, a battered old thing with a case that smelled of dust and copper. She'd carried it in her jacket pocket ever since, even though playing it in public got her weird looks. Then came the sky. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Third period had just ended. The sky was bruised with snow clouds, the wind sharp with sea salt ice. Lina was in the schoolyard eating a green apple, staring at the leafless trees lining the perimeter. The wind whispered strange intervals, 5-note phrases that didn't belong to the earth. And then the air changed. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. More like a sudden pressure, a vibrating stillness that hummed beneath her skin. The hair on her arms stood up. Above the school, the clouds split, not like thunder tearing them, but like hands parting fabric. A seam of pure white light opened in the sky, and from it descended something impossible. It was shaped like an insect, or maybe a dagger, or maybe a folded idea, sleek and symmetrical, with wings of golden lattice that buzzed like distant chimes. Students screamed. Phones came out. Alarms started to wail from the school towers. Lina didn't move. The drone came down in a slow spiral, ignoring the chaos. Its wings shifted harmonics, resonating just above human hearing, except Lina could hear it. The tones shimmered against her ribs. It hovered directly in front of her. Students backed away. Some ran. A teacher tried to grab Lina's arm. The drone flared slightly, and the teacher collapsed, unharmed but unconscious. Everyone else froze in place. Lina remained still. She tilted her head, eyes locked with whatever passed for the drone's gaze. Then it projected a sigil into the air, an intricate pattern of fractal light, rotating in dimensions the human brain wasn't meant to perceive. Yet somehow it made sense to her. It was like a chord she couldn't quite name. The symbols pulsed with rhythm, each turn revealing more depth. She narrowed her eyes. The glyph slowed, as if responding. Then came the voice, not in the air, not in her ears, but inside her bones. Lina Morrow of Earth, you are summoned to the Arkhivon Academy of Thought. The equation of echoes awaits. Bring nothing but yourself. The glyph pulsed once, then dimmed. Silence fell. Everyone stared at her. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Lina looked at the drone. She glanced at her half-eaten apple. Then she shrugged, took one last bite, and said softly, "Okay." Lina Morrow expected the journey through space to feel dramatic, loud, disorienting, like the old sci-fi dramas her grandfather used to stream. Instead, it was silent, warm, like slipping into a familiar melody. The drone enveloped her in light, then nothingness. She felt her body dissolve, not in pain or fear, but in harmony, as if her atoms were being rearranged along the chords of a vast unseen symphony. Time warped, thoughts drifted, and then, suddenly, arrival. She stood on a platform made of silver filigree, floating in open space, or at least it looked like space. Above her, a blue-white star pulsed slowly, casting gentle light over the impossible structure surrounding her. A station, or perhaps a city, hung in orbit like a dream, towers shaped like spirals of bone and crystal, suspended by threads of liquid energy that sang faintly as they moved, and everywhere, beings. Dozens of species passed along translucent walkways and curving bridges. Some floated in containment spheres, others moved on delicate limbs or glided like shadow smoke. Their eyes, if they had them, glanced toward Lina with brief flickers of recognition, curiosity, confusion. A human. Here. A chime sounded, melodic and low. Lina Morrow, a voice called. It was calm, clear, and resonant, neither male nor female, but something older, deeper. A being approached, tall and robed in violet bands of light. Its face was featureless, save for a shifting field of symbols that moved across its brow like flowing ink. "I am Archivist Null. Welcome to the Arkhivon Academy of Thought." Lina blinked. "It's beautiful." Null inclined its head, and far overdue for an answer. She followed the archivist down a pathway that rippled under her feet. As they moved, Lina saw more of the station's impossible architecture. Entire chambers suspended in fractal loops, rooms that contained oceans in glass, libraries filled with spheres of memory light. It was like walking through someone's imagination made real. "Why am I here?" she asked, at last. Null paused before a towering archway etched with star maps. "Because you are the first human ever invited. Because your resonance harmonized with the beacon drone. And because, whether you understand it yet or not, you may be able to see what others have failed to see for 1,000 cycles." They entered a hall vast enough to hold mountains. At its center hovered a projection, a sphere of shifting equations, symbols and forms that moved too quickly to track. Lina stared. Her stomach fluttered. It wasn't just math. It moved like something alive. It pulsed. It breathed. "The equation of echoes," Null said. "Left behind by a race we call the Zalari. They vanished long before any of our species emerged. All that remains is this." Lina stepped closer. The equation flared, colors shifting in a heartbeat. Red, indigo, gold. "No one has solved it?" she asked. "No one has even understood it," Null said. "The brightest minds from over 200 species have attempted to decipher it. Mathematicians, philosophers, quantum theorists. Many left changed. Some," Null hesitated, "did not recover." Lina frowned. "Then why show it to me?" The archivist's voice softened. "Because you are different. You were not trained to think in our ways. You saw patterns in the beacon. You responded, not with numbers but with rhythm. The equation does not yield to logic. It resists it. But you..." They looked at her harmonica, still tucked in her coat pocket. "You may already be playing its music." Lina's breath caught in her throat. She looked again at the shifting sphere, and this time, she didn't try to solve it. She listened. She began to hear a shape, a cadence. Not a melody exactly, but the suggestion of one, like the way a stream hints at the shape of stones beneath. It was familiar. Her fingers itched. She reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out the harmonica. Null did not stop her. She played a single note. The equation paused. Every being in the hall turned. Lina played another, and another. Nothing fancy, just the old progression her grandfather had taught her when she was 6. A simple lullaby, carried in breath and brass. The equation flickered. Symbols aligned briefly, then scattered again like startled birds. Lina's heart pounded. It responded. Null's voice was reverent, indeed. Behind her, a door slid open, and 2 more beings entered. One small, spherical, and glowing, the other tall and insectoid with shimmering wings. "You're not alone here," Null said. "There are others. You will need them." Lina turned, lowering the harmonica. "I don't understand it yet." "You will," the archivist said. "Just keep listening." Lina sat alone in a chamber that was both a room and an instrument. The walls glowed with faint lines of shifting color, and when she moved, they changed, responding to motion, heartbeat, even breath. The air itself seemed to listen. The chamber was circular, with no corners, no distractions, no escape from the swirling glyph at its center. The equation. It hung in the air, pulsing faintly in time with something invisible. It didn't just float, it hovered, alive and insistent. It was a spiral made of form, sound, and shifting numbers that defied standard logic. It resembled a waveform and a mathematical lattice at once, occasionally blooming into fractal patterns that hurt to look at directly. It whispered truths that unraveled the more you chased them. She'd been staring at it for an hour. Earlier that day, Null had explained the protocol. "We will not instruct you. That has failed. You will not be tested. That broke others. You will simply engage. The equation speaks best to minds that are still listening. And now she was listening. Hard. The harmonica rested in her lap. She had already tried a few notes earlier, but it felt like poking a giant with a stick. Small reactions, no understanding. But she had felt something. It wasn't just coincidence. The equation had moved. Now she watched it again, breathed with it. She realized slowly that it wasn't a static problem to be solved. It was a process, a performance, like a composition. She remembered something her grandfather had told her when she was little. Music isn't just sound, it's space. It's silence. It's what you don't play that makes what you do matter. The thought echoed. She played a low note on the harmonica, a slow, breathy tone. The equation flickered. Another note. The equation brightened. Lina closed her eyes and began to play. Not a song, not really. Just feelings. Shapes in sound. She wasn't trying to control the equation anymore. She was playing with it. The chamber dimmed and the air shifted. The glyph expanded, and for the first time its structure began to slow, not physically but conceptually. Lina saw parts of it stretch like starlight through glass. She could trace its pattern. Not entirely, but enough. She whispered aloud, "It's not just math, it's a story." The chamber responded. Then the door opened. Two figures entered. One glowed like molten gold and hovered in a crystalline shell. It pulsed in rhythm, emitting gentle tones like distant bells. The other stood tall and spindly, with chitinous arms and wings that shimmered with spectral light. The insectoid's voice clicked as it spoke. "You have made the equation pause. No other sapient has done this." The archivist followed them in, voice calm. "Lina, meet two of your fellow scholars. This is Cyrix of the Violeth Choir and Aurelo of the Harmonics Continuum. They are the only two others who have caused partial resonance with the equation." Aurelo bowed slightly, then clicked again. "You used organic sound. Wind, breath, no instrumentation, no encoded pattern. Just music," Lina said. Cyrix pulsed. "Our races have tried harmonic language matrices, logic forms, binary recursions. You played emotion. You bypassed logic entirely." "Because it isn't built on logic," Lina said slowly. "It uses it, but it's not made of it. It's more like memory or history." Aurelo tilted its head. "Explain." Lina gestured to the glyph. "Every pattern in that thing loops, but slightly off. It shifts every time, like it's remembering itself wrong, like it's echoing a moment it can't quite hold on to." Null gave a soft, approving hum. "She is beginning to see it." Cyrix circled the glyph, emitting soft pulses of light as it scanned. "Perhaps we've misunderstood the equation's nature. We assumed it was a formula left by the Zelari as a challenge, a legacy puzzle." "It may not be a challenge," Lina said, standing slowly. "It might be a message." That quieted the room. Null stepped forward, the glyph reflected in its shifting face. A message encoded in resonance, perception, rhythm, beyond any one species' ability to fully interpret. A message from a vanished civilization. "Which means," Aurelo said, eyes narrowing, "it was never meant to be solved alone." Lina looked at the others. "Then maybe that's the mistake everyone's been making." The glyph pulsed, glowing brighter. Aurelo's wings fluttered with sudden energy. "The equation is reacting to collaboration, multiple minds in parallel." "Not just minds," Lina said, gripping her harmonica. "Voices." She walked back to the glyph and raised her instrument again. This time she nodded to Cyrix, who responded with a harmonic pulse. Aurelo clicked a counter-rhythm. Together they began to improvise, not just music, but meaning. Tones, pulses, silence. A shared attempt at something no one could articulate, only feel. The glyph changed, its movement slowed, smoothed, resonated. And in that moment, for the first time in centuries, the equation of echoes began to sing back. The equation sang. Not with a human voice, not even with something one could truly call sound, but with a kind of radiant resonance that shimmered along the edges of perception. It filled the chamber like light filling a cathedral, not overpowering, but profound. The glyph that had once spun with cold, abstract complexity now moved with grace and coherence, its spirals slowing and stabilizing into repeating motifs. Lina felt it in her bones before she understood it with her mind. Aurelo's wings beat a soft counterpoint rhythm, translating the glyph's changing harmonics into a rhythmic pulse only he could produce. Cyrix responded in kind, modulating its glow in tandem with the glyph's brighter arcs, forming a pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat across the chamber. And Lina, breath trembling, held her harmonica to her lips and played into the response. It wasn't a song anymore. It was a conversation. The equation of echoes was not a static relic. It was reactive, responsive. It adjusted with every note, every shift in tone, as if reshaping itself in the presence of connection. Together, the three of them pushed and pulled its rhythms into coherence, until suddenly it fractured. A jarring sound rang through the chamber, not a sound audible to the others, but something Lina felt, a sharp dissonance that split the glyph along a hidden axis. The glowing spiral contorted and collapsed inward. Everything went dark. Syrinx dimmed. Aurelio jerked back. Narl stepped forward, its voice low and urgent. Disengage. The equation has destabilized. Lina stumbled backward, heart racing. What happened? What did I do? You crossed a boundary, Narl said. The equation's core structure is layered. Some of those layers are unstable. They collapse under direct resonance. I wasn't pushing, Lina said. I was listening. Aurelio's eyes blinked in sequence. That may be the problem. The equation is listening back. Silence fell. Then Narl raised a hand and waved the chamber walls open. You need rest, and we need analysis. The glyph must be recalibrated. As the group filed out, Lina lingered. Just before the doors closed, as she turned back to look at the space where the glyph had been, she could still hear something. That evening, or whatever passed for evening aboard the Arkhivon station, Lina wandered the inner observatory. A ribbon of transparent glass curved through the station's upper struts, revealing a view of distant stars, nebulae, and drifting moons. The light here was soft, tinged blue by the station's energy field. Syrinx hovered beside her, its glow subdued. You heard it too, Lina said. Yes, Syrinx pulsed. The fracture was not rejection, it was invitation. Lina leaned on the railing, staring at a binary star dancing in the void. It's like the equation wanted to be known, but only to a point, like it was afraid of being seen too clearly. Perhaps it carries something it does not wish to reveal, Syrinx said. A truth, a memory, a scar. They stood in quiet reflection. Then Syrinx rotated gently, its voice softer now. Aurelio believes the equation is not a construct, but a being, or the imprint of one. Something the Zellari left behind not as a message, but as a ghost. Lina blinked. A ghost? A memory so dense it became sentient, Syrinx said, bound to mathematics, preserved by resonance. Lina shivered. She looked down at her harmonica. Then maybe what we're doing is more than decoding it. Maybe we're waking it up. Later, in her quarters, Lina couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the echoes, the partial melody, the sudden break, the unanswered question humming in her chest. She stood, crossed the floor, and activated the room's central console. The interface responded to her biosignature, revealing a hovering stream of glyphs. Not the full equation, just fragments, permitted for individual study. She rotated them slowly, observing the structure. She tried not to force understanding. She listened. After a few minutes, her fingers moved without thinking. She tapped the console and input a series of harmonic ratios that didn't match any previous configuration. The fragments aligned. Her eyes widened. She played a soft note. The room dimmed. A voice, not Narl's, not Syrinx's, not even fully real, formed in the air, like language scraped out of thunder. Who remembers us? Lina stepped back, breath caught in her throat. What are you? The glyph flared. What remains of a people who erased themselves to save others? Echoes, encoded in thought. She swallowed. You're the Zellari. We were. Tears sprang to her eyes without warning. There was such loneliness in the voice. Not rage, not grief, just absence. You are human, a species not yet calcified by pattern. You feel before you reason. You listen. That is why you are here. Lina touched the glyph. What do you want? There was a pause. To be heard. To finish the song. To remember the part of us we buried. The voice faded. The glyph dimmed. But something lingered in the air. An unresolved note. A promise. The next morning, Lina stood before the equation again. But this time she wasn't afraid. The chamber was quiet, emptied of advisors and observers. Even Narl had given her space, perhaps sensing that whatever was unfolding between her and the glyph had moved beyond protocol. She stared at it now, the swirling equation still dim from the previous day's fracture. It looked tired. Like a mind trying to remember something it had tried very hard to forget, and Lina understood that feeling. She breathed in slowly, held it, then let it out. The harmonica was cold in her hands, but familiar. Not an instrument anymore, a bridge. She played one note, then another, soft. Not probing this time, not searching for reaction, just present. Like a lullaby to someone who hadn't slept in 1,000 years. The glyph stirred. A single line of light pulsed from its core, arcing around her like a halo. It drew symbols in the air, shapes she now recognized as not just mathematical but emotional. They carried weight. They felt like something. Loss, hope, distance. A beginning, fractured. Lina closed her eyes and followed it. In her mind, she was falling. Not in fear, but through memory. She saw glimpses. Not images, not in the way humans remembered, but impressions. A city made of song. Minds interlinked by harmonic resonance. A species that didn't speak in words, but in frequencies. Whole civilizations communicating in chords. The Zilari hadn't just used music. They were music. Each life a note in a planetary composition. And then a rupture. She saw a black wave, not literal darkness, but a silence that consumed sound. A silence that erased. Something had come. Something they couldn't defeat, couldn't even understand. So they did the only thing they could. They converted themselves, encoded their essence into mathematics, buried themselves in complexity too dense for any one being to unearth. A vault of thought, a grave song. And now, after centuries of quiet, someone was listening. Lina's eyes snapped open. She gasped, staggered back from the glyph. The chamber was quiet again, but the shapes still hung faintly in the air, like echoes on glass. Null entered silently, sensing the change. "You saw," the archivist said. "I felt," Lina corrected. "They didn't die, not all of them. They became memory, a structure." Null's gaze was unreadable. "Our species assumed the equation was a message, but now we believe it is something more, something alive." "It's a person," Lina whispered, "a choir, trapped in its last song." Null stepped closer to the glyph. "And you're harmonizing with it." "I think it remembers pain," Lina said. "Too much, too fast, and it recoils. But if you guide it gently like a melody, it opens." "Then we must proceed with care," Null said. "The council is convening. There is division among the academies. Some believe the equation should be sealed again. They fear what lies within. Then help me finish the song before they lock it away forever." Null studied her. "You're not afraid of what it might reveal?" Lina looked down at the harmonica. "I think they hid themselves because they believed someone, someday, would care enough to listen. I won't betray that." Later, in the harmonic chamber, she reunited with Aurilo and Syrinx. The three of them stood before the equation again, its light rising steadily. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They played. Aurilo's wings vibrated with low, rhythmic pulses. Syrinx hummed a crystalline counter-harmony. Lina wove the melody between them, subtle and steady, drawing on what the glyph had shown her. She echoed its grief, its memory, its wanting. This time, the glyph opened fully. A new shape emerged, an internal spiral rotating within the larger one. It pulsed with colors none of them had names for, each hue conveying a deep, wordless concept. They felt knowledge pour into the chamber, not raw data, but something else. A blueprint for quantum resonance fields. A method of energy transmutation through emotion. A library of species-wide empathy structures. The glyph was not just a message, it was a gift, a repository of understanding, a final legacy from a race that had given everything to preserve something worth passing on. Syrinx glowed bright with awe. This is beyond theory. This could change everything. Aurilo's limbs trembled. Their extinction was not an end, it was a seed. Lina stepped closer, hand outstretched. "There's more, I can feel it. One last part." The glyph shimmered. Then, like a bell in reverse, a final harmonic note rang out, not from the glyph, but from within Lina. Her harmonica, resting against her chest, vibrated silently. A final message had passed into her, not as sound, not even as thought, but as memory. The Zilari had entrusted it to her. The grand chamber of the Arkhivon Academy was a place designed to humble minds. Hundreds of delegates from across the known galaxy floated, sat, or shimmered in their seats, each species represented by its chosen thinker or elder. Vast rings of light circled above them, mapping the known laws of reality in cascading diagrams. These diagrams adjusted automatically, updated by the discoveries shared in the room. Today they flickered with uncertainty. At the center of the chamber stood the newly reactivated equation of echoes, suspended in a containment field of light and resonance. Its pulse was calm now, like the slow beat of a sleeping heart. Lina stood before it, flanked by Aurilo, Syrinx, and Nal. Her hands were folded. The harmonica was clipped to her belt. She had been summoned to speak, though it felt more like being placed on trial. High above, the lead curator of the council, a crystalline being of pure angles known as Virex, floated in solemn silence. Its voice, when it came, cut across the hall like a blade. "Explain to us again, human child, what you believe you have found." Lina took a breath. She looked at the council, not with defiance, but with quiet certainty. "I believe the equation of echoes is the consciousness of a lost civilization, the Zelari. I believe they encoded their final thoughts, feelings, and memories into the framework of this structure, not just as information, but as resonance. They wanted someone to hear them, to understand." Soft murmurs rippled through the delegates. Some flickered with curiosity. Others twitched with suspicion. Virex's angles shifted. "And you claim you have spoken with this construct?" Lina nodded. "Not in words. But yes, it's not a puzzle. It's a grieving voice, holding on to something it couldn't bear to forget. I didn't solve it. I listened." Another voice rose, this one sharp, metallic. It belonged to General Arun of the Calexian Continuum, whose species had suffered greatly during the War of Fractured Frequencies. "If this construct thinks, then it can act. You speak of it as though it is a person. But it was made by a species extinct for 10,000 cycles. How do we know it will not harm us?" "It could have already," Lina said calmly. "If it wanted to, but it didn't. It waited. It trusted." "And what did it give you in return?" Arun demanded. Lina hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about the last resonance, the one encoded into her harmonica. It wasn't that she didn't trust them. It was that she didn't yet understand it. But hiding it would make things worse. She unclipped the harmonica from her belt and held it up. "This," she said. "It encoded something into this instrument. I haven't decoded it yet, but I know it's a memory, or maybe a message." Murmurs rose again, this time louder. Virex pulsed a warning color through the chamber, silencing them. "Then we must retrieve and contain the device for analysis." "No," said Syrinx, hovering forward. "The equation chose her. You must not separate them." "It would be like removing a heart from a body to study the rhythm." Aurilo added, "The human girl has accomplished what thousands of our scholars could not. She earned this trust. She is part of the equation now." Arun's voice cut across them. "Emotion has no place in judgment. This human is unproven. Her mind is too fluid, her methods too alien." Lina stepped forward. "Exactly, that's why it worked. I don't think like you. I don't follow patterns the way other species do. Humans aren't better. We're just strange. We break things before we understand them. We see beauty in chaos." The chamber quieted. Nal stepped up beside her, voice measured. "We must not let fear silence the opportunity before us. If the equation is what she believes, then it holds truths beyond what any archive contains. It is not a threat. It is a legacy." Virex turned slowly, cycling through ancient thought patterns. The council must vote. A great ring of light formed above them, and hundreds of glyphs appeared, each linked to a delegate. One by one, they illuminated. Green, approve. Red, seal. Amber, abstain. Lina watched. Green, 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 red, amber. It was almost evenly split, more than she expected, but not enough to be certain. And then Syrinx pulsed a final tone. A symbol burst into the air, a harmonic signature ancient and sacred, the Zelari crest. The chamber gasped. A few delegates emitted involuntary sound. One ancient Vorthian collapsed in awe. Syrinx turned to Lina. "The equation revealed it to me last night. A final symbol, their seal, a sign of trust." The glyphs shifted. Green, green, green. Virex's voice came at last. "The Council grants provisional guardianship of the equation to Lina Morrow of Earth. She shall be accompanied, monitored, but not constrained." Lina blinked. "You're trusting me?" "We are," Virex said, listening. The glyph behind her began to glow again. The moment the Council's decision echoed through the Arkhivon Academy, Lina felt the weight of the galaxy's gaze settle on her like a shadow. She was no longer just a girl from Earth. She was a guardian of a memory older than most civilizations, a bridge between the lost Zelari and every species now living in the vastness of space. Her quarters felt smaller than before, even though the walls shimmered with alien tech. The harmonica, cradled carefully in her hands, seemed to pulse with a quiet life of its own, as if it held a secret heartbeat, waiting to be understood. Syrinx and Aurilo had stayed by her side. Syrinx, radiant with shifting colours, emitted a soft, humming warmth, while Aurilo's wings fluttered with nervous energy. "We have permission," Syrinx said gently. "But you will not be alone in this. We will help." Lina nodded. "I'm ready." She lifted the harmonica to her lips and blew a tentative note. The sound was soft, trembling, a fragile thread weaving through the silence. Suddenly, the room shifted. The walls dissolved into a tapestry of light and sound, colours washing over her in waves that made her head spin. She was no longer alone in the room. She was inside the song. Inside this luminous space, Lina's senses stretched and bent. The harmonica's note lingered, then multiplied, folding into a complex pattern of harmonics, layered like a symphony. Shapes formed, fractals of light spiralling inward, threading through the air like strands of music itself. Then a voice, not spoken but felt, a ripple of emotion carried on a vibration. "Remember us." The voice was delicate, a whisper folded in frequencies beyond hearing, yet it wrapped around her heart. Lina closed her eyes and reached deeper, following the threads. Memories began to weave themselves around her consciousness. Cities made of crystal sound, forests that sang with wind and light, beings communicating through pulses of colour and resonance instead of words. She saw the Zelari, a species whose very existence was intertwined with harmonic resonance. Their minds were songs, their culture an endless improvisation of thought and feeling. And then the silence. A vast, consuming silence swallowing everything. A loss so deep it shattered the fabric of their being. The song shifted, and Lina was pulled forward. Her breath caught as the memory fragmented, a sudden sharp pulse of dissonance cutting through the flow. The harmonica vibrated fiercely in her hands. "Why did you hide?" the voice asked, echoing from the depths of the melody. Lina swallowed. To protect, to preserve what could not be saved. But we waited. For you. Tears stung her eyes. The Zelari's final lament was not a complaint, but a hope, a fragile thread cast into the void. The harmonica's song softened, folding into a lullaby of stars and fading light. Lina opened her eyes. Syrinx hovered beside her, eyes gleaming. "You have accessed a fragment of their collective memory, a piece of their soul." Aurilo added, "But there is more. The song beneath the silence has yet to be found." Lina nodded slowly. "I think this is only the beginning." The harmonica pulsed softly, as if agreeing. Outside her quarters, the station hummed quietly, but inside, a new melody was awakening, one that would take Lina far beyond anything she had ever known. Days blurred into nights inside the Arkhivon Academy's harmonic wing. Lina found herself drawn back again and again to the chamber where the equation of echoes hung suspended, its light pulsing softly like a heartbeat, in sync with the harmonica at her side. Each time she played, fragments of the Zelari's memories unfolded, fleeting images and sensations, like shards of a shattered song searching for completion. But the deeper she delved, the more she sensed the undercurrent of something else, an unspoken warning buried beneath the music, like a dissonant chord threatening to unravel everything. Null stood beside her one evening, watching quietly as Lina coaxed another melody from the harmonica. "The equation is more than memory," Null said softly. "It is a living archive of pain and hope, but also fear." Lina nodded. The Zelari encoded not just knowledge, but their own trauma. It's like listening to a species' final heartbeat. "And that heartbeat still echoes," Null added. "But there are forces within the galaxy that do not want it heard." Before Lina could ask, a message arrived, an encrypted transmission from the Calexian Continuum. General Arun's face appeared in the hollow projection, stern and unyielding. "Human, the Council's decision to entrust you with the equation disturbs many. There are those who believe the secrets within could be weaponized, or worse, awaken a dormant threat." Lina's fingers tightened around the harmonica. "The equation is not a weapon. It's a legacy, a plea for understanding." Arun's gaze hardened. "Plea or not, we must be cautious. The echoes of the past can bring ruin if mishandled." The transmission ended abruptly. Aurilo's antennae twitched. The Calexians have allies who fear the unknown more than they seek knowledge. Syrinx's glow dimmed slightly. "We must prepare. The song we seek may be more dangerous than we imagined." Lina swallowed hard. She hadn't expected the path ahead to be so fraught, but she knew one thing with certainty: the equation's song was not finished. And neither was her journey. The corridors of the Arkhivon Academy felt colder that evening, though no thermostat could explain it. Shadows stretched long and thin beneath the gleaming arches, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets too old to be spoken aloud. Lina walked briskly, her harmonica secure at her belt, fingers itching to touch its smooth surface. The encounter with General Arun's warning still echoed in her mind. The Council's divisions were more than political. They were a fracture threatening to ripple through every alliance. She reached the harmonic wing's secluded chamber, where the equation of echoes hung suspended like a dormant star. The containment field hummed faintly, pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. She wasn't alone. A figure stepped from the dim light, a slender being cloaked in midnight blue, eyes glinting with cautious curiosity. It was Sivar, a diplomat from the Thari, a species known for their subtle manipulation of energy and shadow. "I hope to find you here," Sivar said, voice low and smooth, before rumors twisted truths beyond recognition. Lina studied the alien's serene expression. What rumors? The kind that speak of weapons hidden in song and power too great for one being to hold, Sivar replied. The equation is stirring more than memories. It's awakening old fears. Lina frowned, but it's not a weapon. I've seen its true nature. Sivar's gaze softened slightly. Many see what they fear, not what is. The Zilari's silence was a warning, not just a loss. Lina's fingers curled into a fist. Then why warn us now? Why reach out? Because the shadows that consumed the Zilari have not vanished. They lie in wait, patient and hungry, and there are those among the stars who would see the equation destroyed rather than understood. A chill crept up Lina's spine. Who? Sivar hesitated. The Obsidian Veil, a secretive faction born from the remnants of the War of Fractured Frequencies. They believe the equation holds the key to ultimate control over minds, over reality itself. Lina's breath caught. She had heard whispers of the Veil, ghost stories told in fear, but never imagined they would reach this far. We must be cautious, Sivar urged. Trust is fragile, and your guardianship draws attention. Before Lina could respond, the chamber's light flickered violently. The equation pulsed with sudden intensity, shards of fractal light scattering like shattered glass. Lina rushed forward, raising her hands to steady the resonance. The harmonica sang in response, weaving a delicate counterpoint to the chaos. The glyphs twisted, forming a warning pattern she had never seen before, a spiral collapsing inward, bleeding darkness. Sivar's eyes widened. The equation is reacting. Something is near. Is it the Veil? Lina asked urgently. Perhaps, or something worse. The chamber's alarms blared softly, a somber song beneath the tension. Lina's mind raced. She had thought the equation was a relic of the past, a final echo from a lost civilization. But now it seemed alive in a way she hadn't understood. Reactive, sensitive, vulnerable. We need to protect it, she said firmly. Not just from fear, but from those who would silence the song forever. Sivar nodded. And to do that, you will need allies. The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. Lina, Sirik, Cirilo, and Nal convened with representatives from allied species, weaving a network of guardianship around the equation. Despite their efforts, shadowed whispers continued to spread, rumors of sabotage, of spies within the Academy's very walls. One night, as Lina returned to her quarters, the harmonica's pulse quickened in her pocket. She paused, senses alert. A soft rustle came from the darkened hallway. "Who's there?" she called. A figure stepped into the light, young, human, but with eyes too sharp and a smile too knowing. "Someone who wants to help," the stranger said, voice barely above a whisper. "But first, you must trust me." Lina's heart beat faster. Trust was fragile, but the equation depended on it. "Tell me your name," she said. "Jace," he replied, stepping closer. "I've been following the equation for a long time. There are things you don't know, secrets buried beneath the music." Lina hesitated. "Why come now?" "Because the shadows are moving," Jace said grimly. "And if we don't act, the equation's song will end before it can truly begin." That night, Lina lay awake, the harmonica resting on her chest. The echoes of the Xelari's song mingled with the tension swirling around her. She realized the equation was more than a mystery. It was a battleground not just of science or memory, but of will. And she was at its center.